All right, welcome to another episode of that Naturopathic Podcast. Dr. David Miller, ND, here with Michelle Pobega, ND. What's up?
What up? Happy to
What's
be here,
happening?
Dave. Happy to be here.
Yeah, me
Nothing,
too.
just you know what? It feels like there's a weird something happening. I feel like the tides have turned. I'm in a good headspace. I'm back on my meditation jazz. I'm trying some frequency therapies to help keep my body in like a happy place, and things are good. How are you?
Good. I'm not being perfect with my naturopathic lifestyle, but I think I'm doing all right. And
I
that's like a theme lately, I find, is like as I get older, I'm a lot easier on people because I feel like progress over perfection always comes
Yeah.
through.
Perfection is overrated. Who even gets to
Totally.
decide who even gets to decide what that is? I feel like it's just this like constantly movable goalpost. So
Yeah. It's a funny one because paradoxically, you got to aim kind of for it, but you can't really expect it. And it's like a funny sort of paradox that's taken me a long time to
I
try and
say
get.
aim for greatness, not perfection.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Yeah. How about that?
Well, speaking of greatness, we are talking about possibly one of the greatest nerves today. That sounds really nerdy, anatomical nerdy, but
Yeah, totally does.
it does. But is it not one of the coolest nerves if you had to sort of rate the coolness of nerves?
It's my favorite nerve, if I'm really being frank.
Yeah. So be frank with us and tell us what we're talking about.
I'll be frank, you can still be Dave. Dag jokes. Yeah, we are talking about our favorite nerve. And Dave, you want to tell the audience what
Well,
we're
I
gonna
gave it up to you, but it's the vagus nerve. You
Yeah,
threw it right back at me.
I did. I did.
Vagus nerve. It's a wandering conversation already, just like the vagus nerve is named such for being wandering. The vagabond nerve,
Is
vagus.
for reals?
Yeah, because
Is
it's
that where that
wandering.
comes from? Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
I think that's sometimes word etymology is helpful and cool, and that's where it comes from because it's called the wandering nerve because it wanders anatomically from your brainstem inside your skull to the splenic flexure, basically, and it touches its magic parasympathetic system fairy dust on everything along the way. Yeah.
It's pretty magical. I dig that fairy dust. She's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's rest and digest, and maybe we'll just like oversimplify the kind of like sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. We're not really going to talk about like the
Yeah.
polyvagal theory and stuff. I think
Oh
we've
my
talked about it
God.
before.
Okay, so for people who are not in the naturopathic realm or a physician of some sorts or clinician, your autonomic nervous system is basically we don't need our consciousness to direct what it does. It's the automated stuff that happens in our body, like our heart beating, our lungs breathing, like all that stuff that doesn't require our thought. And the parasympathetic nervous response is one branch of that automated response, and your vagus nerve is like, if I remember correctly, hold on, there was a statistic I was reading. It said that your vagus nerve holds 75 to 85% of parasympathetic nervous fibers. That's a
Neat.
significant amount.
Yeah.
So it really makes up majority of your parasympathetic response, and your parasympathetic response is your rest and digest response. The other one is your sympathetic response, which is your fight, flight, freeze, that like endorphin, adrenaline rush, like how do I got to react to a stressor kind of vibe. So
Mhm.
this is the exact opposite. So they have to have this interplay within our body to keep us alive and allow us to be able to react and adjust to the environment around us.
Mhm. Yeah, you need both. You need a gas pedal and you
Yeah.
need a brakes.
Yeah.
And I think mostly we're lacking a lot in the brakes, and that's where the parasympathetic and vagus really come into
Mm-hmm.
play. But I mean, we'll talk a little bit about any relevant anatomy maybe has come up, but I think to keep the picture sort of like big and inclusive of maybe relevance for people. Let's say some of the things that it has huge influence on as a whole. And you could say mood, immune response, digestion, which I mean, you could dissect that even more, heart rate, breathing, and potentially gives us some therapeutic opportunities in depression, PTSD, IBD, IBS, and interesting. We were talking briefly about this too, in terms of like, I think you brought up resiliency or something like that.
Adaptability.
Yeah. There's some people in my life with some struggles with, resiliency or to changing situations. I think it happens a lot in kids, and especially if they have ADHD. So I see I'm wondering how much there is implications for this in ADHD, but it helps you be sort of emotionally more resilient to ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So like, I think the other thing too, it can help you not only adapt from an emotional perspective, but it also enables your body to more effectively adapt to even physical and chemical stressors in the environment. So it's not
Yes.
even emotional stressors. It's going to also allow you to adapt in like on a physical plane as well, which I think is really important. And it always makes me think back to those conversations with Dr. Jenny that we've had. God bless her, with her work with like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, mitochondrial dysregulation, and how she always talks about that limbic brain, right?
Yeah.
It's the limbic brain.
Yeah.
And one of the big things with when you have vagus nerve dysregulation or low vagal tone, and all these different symptoms can show up, like anxiety or high blood pressure, or even type 2 diabetes or Crohn's and colitis, and all this kind of stuff can come up. Really, what you have to do is try to retrain your nervous system's response to feel safe again, because that's when it can relax, when it's no longer feeling like it's threatened. And every time we talk about this vagal stuff, it just makes me think back to Dr. Jenny's stuff, where she was like, it's really that idea of safety. And then when your body feels safe, it can actually heal and recover and adapt. And a lot of people, I think, aren't stimulating their vagal tone to be able to bring them back into a state of safety to allow their body to heal. And I feel like for me, that's the biggest take home message. Healing happens in a parasympathetic nervous state. Optimal healing happens when your vagal tone is like well regulated, and it actually allows for your body to like rest, shift,
and
recover.
digest.
Rest and digest and recover.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that really interesting about the resiliency, and then obviously tying in all the physiological correlates you're talking about there too. I did see a study, and I mostly looked at some anatomy to I guess give some framework to what I already thought I see clinically. But I did look at a couple of studies, and I saw this interesting one on transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation. So they're doing this through the ear. Because, and again, I'll throw in a relevant anatomical bit here, is that the vagus nerve does have sensory origins in the auricle, in the ear. So you can, and remember the vagus, and I don't know if I said this, the vagus has sensory and motor, right? It's a two-way street, just like there's a highway behind me, and I always point to it when I'm talking to patients about nerves, how the highway goes both ways, right? And the nerves, we do the same thing with the highways as the nerves generally do a lot of the time, which is you've got a sensory and a motor sharing sort of some space there. So you can influence with input the vagus nerve, and then the vagus nerve also has output that influences those things. So that's like input and output aspects to the vagus nerve. What was I going to say about that? Oh, the ear. There's an auricular branch, which has pain sensation, or like sensation, from external ear, tympanic membrane, and the external acoustic meatus. So like stuff in the temporal bone of the skull. So I find that transcutaneous nerve stimulation really interesting. And what they found is that they did it in this study. They were doing it in healthy subjects. So they've done a lot of transcutaneous they've implanted vagal nerve stimulators in people since like the late 90s in quite a, it sounds like quite a invasive kind of procedure, but if the benefit outweighs the risk, and we'll often do things right. But they found even in these healthy people, the vagus nerve stimulation. So you were talking about vagal tone. So stimulating the vagus nerve is kind of counterintuitive. Stimulating vagal tone helps settle nervous system. So it's counterintuitive. But what they found was in doing that vagal nerve stimulation, auricular, I believe it was auricular. It was at least transcutaneous. I think auricular is what they normally do. Reduces the emotional bias towards faces expressing sadness and happiness, indicating a decrease in emotional reactivity. So not just in sick people, but also just in the average person, which I thought was really cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Other sort of, I don't know, clinical things that people may think, okay, that makes sense for me, or I have that symptom. One of the most important, I think, bring up is the gag reflex and swallowing issues. And I've been talking about swallowing issues in the stomach for a long time. I'm wondering if I've conflated stomach and vagal nerve issues because they're just so anatomically related,
intertwined.
Yeah. Like if you have a stomach issue, you probably have a vagal issue, is kind of what I'm getting to. And I'm not always sure exactly when one becomes the other. But those are really, I think those are possibly the most important things that I symptoms that people may think are not maybe that important, or if they're like, oh, I just have a bit of issues swallowing sometimes, it goes down the wrong tube, or it just feels like it gets stuck a little bit. Those are really good indications that maybe the vagal control of that is a little bit off, if not the structure itself.
It's so interesting that over the last few very stressful years we've all experienced as a global collective, I have been finding people coming in, more people now coming in than I think I've ever come across in most of my naturopathic life, that have a hard time swallowing pills. Or like, can you have that in a chewable? Can you have that in a liquid? Can I get that in a whatever?
Yeah.
Like I'm getting a lot more people who are expressing that. And I don't know if it's just because of the stress of the last few years, if there's something they've always had. I can't remember based on my health history with them, but like, I don't know, there's more people coming in, complaining of that, or it being, you know, a notable
Or you're more
symptom.
aware of it too, right?
Right. Because of what I have to prescribe. Right. So
yeah, no, that's one of those whisper, you know, and I say I'm a whisperer. That's one of the ones I'm looking for with the whisperings, which is, it may not seem like a big problem. Like once in a while, I don't swallow properly, or something feels like it gets stuck, or like you're saying, I can't swallow pills. Like, come on, no, like this is not meant to be offensive to anyone, but you should be able to swallow a pill. Like if the majority of people can swallow a pill without, you know, thinking it's some heroic Olympian act, then probably most of us should.
I mean, Nick, if you can swallow a bolus of food, then why can't you swallow a bolus of like a pill? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially if it's not like a horse pill. I mean, I don't know. Anyway,
but
so
your pill people, the people that you notice may have issues with, I wonder if they sometimes have a problem swallowing a bolus of food. Great word, by the way, bolus.
Yeah, bolus is a good word. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that, Dave. Appreciate it.
That training's not for nothing, you know?
Hey. Anything else that you came across, but that whole gag reflex and
that one's
swallowing is interesting. Yeah.
Those ones are probably the most relevant, like in terms of prevalence and perceived innocuousness. I
look at you with the words.
Well, yeah, well, it just came out. But like other ones might be, and there may be other reasons, obviously, for all of these things. Obviously, that goes without saying. But really sensitive gag reflex, like really sensitive brushing your teeth, and it's just like that's a sign, perhaps, that there's an extra sort of sensitivity in that that aspect of the sensory motor loop there. Hoarseness, so it's like a hoarse voice, and hoarseness may be sometimes related to a whole slew of other things in that area, like maybe you have silent reflux, and so you're getting vaporized acid coming up and irritating vocal cords,
Right. But
and
reflux
the
can also,
larynx.
but reflux can also be because of poor vagal tone.
Exactly. So then it's
Yeah.
like, well, which one? At least you
Yeah.
know you're in the right zone,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes that's all I'm looking for with my people in the first visit. I'm like, am I in the right area code here? Like at least.
Right. Yeah.
um, other correlates that came up in my reading were cough reflex, because sensory in the lining of the lungs, cough reflex, which again might be acid coming in, vaporized acid from the stomach, and other vagal related thing getting into the lungs, another vagal related thing, and then having a cough reflex. And as you know, and I actually think they do a good job of training us in school, at least they did, that a chronic cough can sometimes be one of the only signs of GERD or some reflux.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sleep apnea was something I saw, and I hadn't actually thought of that as a vagal sort of symptom or possible correlate.
Oh,
So something else to sort of keep in mind. I thought I got learned today about that one.
yeah.
Michelle's thinking, for the people that are just listening. Michelle's
Sorry. I'm
thinking.
just,
The wheels are turning.
I know, I just like stared off into the distance,
You
deep in
did.
thought. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to the audience who's just like waiting for me to respond.
Well, that's what I did. That's kind of what you did, but I got to do it before we started recording.
But like, yeah.
What are your
And so
thoughts? You're obviously, the wheels are turning there. What are
I'm
you
just,
thinking?
no, and I don't feel like I have a whole heck of a lot going on. Like bits, like I've got some bits and pieces, but it just makes me think of like people who do like their mouth breathers and doing Buteyko breathing and stuff. And it's a stress response that happens. I think and I remember reading something about this, like a stress response that allows for sleep apnea to happen. And a lot of people can't adapt to that stress response well. If that's something about that with sleep apnea. And then Buteyko breathing tries to get you to breathe more effectively with less oxygen so that your body doesn't trigger that stress response all the time.
Mhm.
If I'm so I wouldn't be surprised if like the vagus nerve is part of sleep apnea, just based on those little bits of things that I remember. I think the last time I looked into that was like 2 to 3 years ago. So I might be completely off base, but
No, I think you're in the right area code again. I think
yeah.
there's some link there, and related to probably that is because there's vagal sort of plexi or plexuses where it's that kind of like a little mini uh uh not a brain, it's almost like there's connections between many nerves. It's like a little thinking center.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some around the heart and the aorta, and so sensing like bradycardia and hypotension, so slow heart rate, low blood pressure, and also your arterial gases, so the CO2 and O2. So I can see how those may possibly be related to what you're talking about with sleep apnea there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah,
Cool.
so then that's another area of like a lot of vagal sensory vagal stuff in that heart and carotid branch there.
So
Yeah, so like, and how many people do you see on you? I mean, you see so many people on blood pressure medications, and I wonder how much of it is vaguely modulated, at least, because I mean, and I'm going to horrify any cardiologists out there by saying this, but I'm going to risk it anyway. I do feel a lot of the time like we treat the heart as if the problem is the heart itself, as opposed to like the information the heart's getting or giving. And I compare it to like a horse. You can just like whip it and whip it and whip it, and it will run and run and run until it can't run anymore. Because some people you'll see with, well, you tell me what you think after I'm done this little blurb here, but like it seems like a lot of people with heart blood pressure issues are just stressed, and so I say your heart's just reacting to your stress. But then others, I'm like, I wonder if there's something else going on, because they don't visibly look stressed, they don't feel stressed when you have them in the office. They don't, you know how some people feel stressy.
yeah.
They don't have that, and you're thinking, what the heck's going on? So I wonder if this is something to do with blood pressure issues. Don't know.
What with the vagal tone?
Yeah,
I
I would think
think
it's
so.
part of it.
Well, I mean, like your vagus response is also the exact opposite. Your vagal tone is the exact opposite of like a stress response. So
Yeah,
if one is taking the lead, then your vagal tone is probably being suppressed.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
just overpowered.
I have someone who's like wildly stressed on blood pressure medication. And
Mhm.
I was like, and I was like, we gave him some ashwagandha and I was like, gave him some other things. And I said, and I had to follow up with him. He was like, I was measuring my blood pressure again, and it's quite high. And I was like, when was the last time he's like, could it be the supplements? And I was like, actually, all the supplements, any of the supplements I gave you are meant to actually like lower blood pressure. Like I even put the disclaimer on, like, watch your blood pressure so it doesn't dip
Right.
too much, because these things are going to like calm your nervous system. So just monitor your blood pressure. And I guess
Mhm.
he wasn't having a habit of monitoring his blood pressure. So before he started the supplements, he doesn't have a baseline. And I was like, what if it's actually better now? But you haven't checked it in 2 months and suddenly started checking it and it's still high. And I was like, but you live
Mhm.
in a chronic state of stress. He's like, but I feel more relaxed lately. And I was like, okay, well, keep an eye on it, see if it changes, tell your doctor. but
Mhm.
but he lives in a chronic state of stress. And I was like, well, yeah, that's why your blood pressure's up.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild. And I was like, I don't think your ashwagandha is doing it, because he was like, I actually feel more relaxed. And I was like, well, I don't think that's going to have an effect on your blood pressure in a bad way
Right.
then.
Right. You know,
So,
one thing I think when people have blood pressure responses to foods, maybe supplements in some cases. I had a
mhm,
couple people react in really weird ways to supplements.
yeah.
I will almost invariably blame the stomach, and through its sensory vagus, its effect on
Mhm,
feeling just shitty in
yeah.
some way. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I also was just like, okay, from here on in, if you measure your blood pressure, do it like we do in the office. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Focus on your breathing. Don't
Yeah.
talk to people, because all that stuff triggers your stress response and can affect your
Yeah.
blood pressure. And I said,
Absolutely.
take it at the same time every day. So you're not getting different parts of the day where you're just running home from work and you take your blood pressure. Like, take it around the same time every day so we can get some consistent measurements. Because he's very haphazard about how his approach is to health. So I was like, okay, let's start getting
Right.
consistent and start, because I was like, and decrease your stress response. Like, do these things when you take it
Yeah.
so that we're not aggravating things further. So, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's why, and you have to do a few readings of blood pressure before you can even officially say someone has
Yeah.
issues with hypertension too, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and it changes through the day. You got those circadian
Totally.
rhythms. Yeah.
After eating, after driving home in traffic, like, it's going to be different.
Interesting thing I got learned today too about Vegas is that we know it goes from the brainstem and innervates all that thoracic and abdominal cavity up until the splenic flexure. So that's the last sort of third of the colon. Um, it does not include that last bit of the colon and the rectum. The adrenal glands, which I thought was interesting, not innervated by vagus nerve, and the reproductive organs, which the clinicians will probably know that. But it's interesting because I don't know if you'll see people have it's like they have all these upper GI concerns, but they poop like a champ.
Hmm.
And maybe it's just their sacral plexus, where all the reproductive and colon and rectum stuff control is happening, is fine.
That's interesting, because I came across something and I didn't look into it further because it was literally super quick, but I saw something that the vagus nerve does innervate the cervix, though.
No.
I thought I read
um
something about that.
no, that would that would be, unless there's some that it doesn't. No, that should be sacral. That should be S2, S3, S4.
I thought I came across something like that. So maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to look
Cervical,
into
well,
that a little further.
was it cervical neck? Because not cervix, but cervical, because
No,
there
it
are.
said, I'm pretty sure it said cervix, but
Oh, okay.
maybe I read it and wrote it wrong. But
Yeah,
anyways,
because
but maybe, yeah.
there are cervical plexuses. So I mean, I looked at it, I was going, what the heck? But it was cervical, like neck cervical. So
Yeah,
I don't,
no,
maybe there
no,
was.
this was, I'm pretty sure this said cervix as in,
Oh, okay.
so I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyways,
I,
so I'll have to, audience, don't read me on that one if I'm wrong, because I might have misquoted something there.
I'm gonna get you. I'm just gonna say they probably misread cervical. Let's go with that. Let's give
Sure.
them the benefit. Let's give them the benefit of that, whoever wrote
I'm
that.
gonna try and find that now. I'll come back and
um,
haunt you.
and then what else did I want to bring up about this? Yeah. So there's branches in the meninges, the ear, the pharynx, the carotid, which has those blood pressure and gas concentrates, larynx, so affecting talking, which is probably why, and we can bring in some biohacking,
Yeah.
relevance here. That's why people like to do the gargling
Yeah.
and singing
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Anything that's vibratory also like stimulates that vagus nerve. So we'll get into like how to train your vagus nerve, and like that would have to do something that will have a big part of it.
And then POTS is worth bringing up. It doesn't seem, I think there's something to do with POTS, which is that postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's not the exact same as orthostatic hypotension. When I got looking into it, I've always sort of wondered what the heck's this POTS. But it seems like the tachycardia aspect of POTS is the bigger thing, not the sort of hypotension where you feel like you stand from sitting or from lying and you just feel like you're gonna, you get pre-syncope or like that feeling of where you're gonna faint. But I bet there's some overlap with POTS, and that's where I'll leave my comfort, is that there's probably some more. It's not the same thing. Vagal
Right.
dysautonomia. I think there's some overlap with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. What a mouthful that is. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to bring in some of the stuff you were talking about at the beginning, or have we covered mostly what you wanted to?
We could definitely bring in a little bit more. Other than some things, it helps with your immune response because it helps lower inflammation. Hello, that's a big deal.
Actually, that is
inflamed.
huge. That is huge, and that's we could totally go on a whole other tangent on that, but we'll leave it at vagal tone and anti-inflammatory sort of effects throughout the whole body are related. So that's hugely important therapeutic opportunity.
Yeah, like such a beautiful thing. Digestion. So here's the thing with the vagus nerve is that it's like so deeply connected with your digestive tract, and it's part of that bidirectional communication of your gut brain axis, right? So it helps with the gut immune system. It helps reduce inflammation in the digestive tract as well. It can help reduce reflux if it's like properly stimulated and its vagal tone is good. It can help with constipation, IBS symptoms. It also is like, it contains like primary sensors to monitor any kind of GI signals. So it's going to look at your pH. It's going to look at the hormones in the gut. It's going to look at the gut bacteria. It's going to look at like how much gut distension there is. It's going to look at what the bolus of food that's moving through your intestinal tract is. It's monitoring all of that. And it's through your vagal tone, and your gut brain connection. Your bacteria get to communicate with your brain via the vagus nerve, which is amazing because your gut is your second brain. So just to like double down on the importance of the vagus nerve, if you guys haven't if we haven't hammered that home yet, like the gut brain connection is so pivotal when it comes to how the rest of your body is able to regulate as well. And then the fact that it can just lower inflammation as part of your immune response is also huge. The fact that it can help regulate anxiety and depression, huge. The fact that it can help you adapt to chemical and physical stressors, huge, right? Like I think in a world that's gotten progressively more stressed, more fast paced, more go, 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 like your foot's on the gas pedal all the time. And I get a lot of people who come see me and they're like, but I don't feel stressed. Like I love my job, but their like pace of life is wild. And I was like, and even though they're mentally in a space where they feel like they can stay on top of it and it's like they thrive being busy. And I was like, biochemically, your body is still in a chronic stress response, even if you're mentally feeling like I got this, right? So we need to start finding ways to create space to stimulate our vagal tone, which is part of why I send people to like osteopaths or like visceral manipulation and things like that, because working on the digestive system will help with vagal tone. And then also just working on the spinal column and the innervation of organs and just making sure your nervous system's healthy and like you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So that's why I love osteopaths and that's why I send my clients to them. And that's why
Yes.
what you do with your visceral work is also going to be important for people's vagal tone, I imagine too.
Yes, and I'll say something I yeah, like what you're saying is very, very important, and the fact that some probably manual therapy to the guts is part of
Mhm.
getting better a lot of the time, because I think it's even 70% uh, of the vagus nerve is sensory. So there's more bringing information back than there is
Mhm.
sending information down.
And that's why
So,
massages and stuff are also helpful, right?
yep.
Like stimulating the back of the neck and releasing tension in the back of the neck can help stimulate vagal tone. Like when I was looking into like all
Well, that's where it comes
the
out.
options about vagal, yeah, right. So that's why when I was looking into like all the options on how to like stimulate or strengthen your vagal tone, I mean, like I knew about the chanting, the singing, the humming. Anything that stimulates
Mhm.
that vibration in the vocal cords will stimulate vagal tone, but also loud gargling, not just gargling, but they specifically say loud gargling. When you look it up, that's a big one. Deep
Mhm.
belly breathing, because a lot of people breathe really shallow, and your vagus tone, your vagus
Yeah,
nerve plays a really
you
important
can,
role in breathing.
yeah, you can
So
modulate your vagal tone with breathing. That's actually a really, that's why even in this paper they're talking about like yoga and meditation
yeah,
just as a
exactly.
way of modulating it too.
Exactly. But then there was a few other things like cold showers, cold dips. Like if you can go take a cold walk around the block, that helps. Exercise also helps to stimulate your vagal tone. But like that's why also again, yoga is another one because it connects physical movement with the really like mindful breath work.
Mhm.
But laughing is another one that also helps regulate your vagal tone. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
find joy every day and laugh a little bit every day. But the cold showers is a good one. So if you can do like 30 seconds of cold at the end of your hot shower, that can also help stimulate your vagal tone. But there was a few other things. There was one, it was like tickling the face, the neck, and the scalp. And the minute I thought of the scalp, you know, those things that
Yeah,
massage
yeah.
your scalp and they have all those like little prongs and you kind of like move it up and down on your scalp. And I was like,
Yeah.
maybe that's why those became so popular.
It does feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was
interesting.
another one. So tickling face, neck, and scalp.
Oh my God, my kid loses mind when I tickle
Yeah,
his neck,
yeah,
and he just giggles and giggles, and yeah, vagus nerve,
yeah.
baby.
Because it says the trigeminal nerves carry sensory input from the face, scalp, teeth, oral, and nasal cavities and contains connections to the vagus nerve. But fun fact, bitters also stimulate the vagus nerve. I don't think I knew that. So it says
Yes.
bitter tasting things have found to activate the vagus nerve and increase vagal tone by sending stimuli to the brain. So, like our typical digestive bitters, your gentian, your wormwood, dandelion, arugula, radicchio, like in my Italian heritage, I love those bitters, salad greens and stuff. Like, I was like, yes, I actually have some arugula downstairs. I'm gonna make a bomb ass salad after this.
That's that's why if you think about some of the old boys, old girls, oldies about naturopathic and bitters,
Yes.
they use them to stimulate appetite, and some of them
Hmm.
were also used as like a kind of nervine calming. So the old peoples, a lot of the time they had the basics right a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
look to the elders, man. Our elder naturopaths. That's why like hydrotherapy and like dew walking and all those things probably had such a profound effect on people's healing. And I know like we talked about this even with Dave Nelson, how we were like a lot of those elders and our grassroots naturopathy 101. There's the science now to finally show the effects of those practices we had and show the value and the validity behind those practices that are part of our naturopathic heritage.
Yeah, I think that's true. And then we just have to cut the fat just like everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the concepts are usually on, right? I wanted to talk about this. I found this thing online because I had a kid with ADHD, and I thought I'm seeing this very it's because of that emotional resiliency that I'm thinking for ADHD there, and they all, and this kid too, guess what? He's anemic, and there's probably something to do with the upper GI, and you can blame the stomach and then the vagus nerve. And I'm like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about just trying to to look for some solutions, like for vagal nerve stimulation. So I found this one called Nuvana Life, and I'm interested to. I think the mom might get it for the boy, and we'll
Cool.
see. I'll give an update when I hear about it. But I mean, the kid loves music, and this thing, you just put it on with like your smartphone, listen to music, and then it stimulates transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation. So yeah, stay tuned. There might be more of this stuff coming out. I think some of them are under FDA evaluation in the States. So yeah,
That's cool.
that'd be great, because it's hard to treat the. Let me say the back up here. There are so many, like the more I see people, and the more I understand a bit about stomach, vagus nerve, and all that, I'm like, wow, we need to know more, because we need to do more to support this vagus nerve, like you said, with life being a bit crazy, hectic, feelings of safety, PTSD, anxiety, ADHD. My God, like if we can find ways in to support vagal tone, so many things, Michelle, are going to get better. So many things. So
Yeah.
I should say too, you can this might people. So I might lose people here. That's okay. I have been doing some hands-on manipulation that affects vagus tone, and it involves, palpating areas where there's, maybe vagal plexus, the back of the jugular foramen, or down in the upper GI where there's a couple of, hot points.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find people who can, with physical manipulation, osteopathic, they can treat to some degree, varying degrees. I've had varying degrees of success. And remember, I haven't been doing it very long, so I wouldn't be like a pro at this. But the fact that you can even do anything by touching where the vagus nerve, where you can access the vagus nerve with osteopathic techniques, is absolutely mind-blowing. And I hope to learn more, and I hope that people know that you can seek out probably an osteopath who might have some ability to work on that actual nerve.
Yeah. And it might just have to be that it has to be like a layered effect. The osteopath plus maybe some practices at home, like you do a 30-second cold blast. Maybe you learn to do some deep breath work. Like, in all fairness though, like everybody needs to give that, like most people, let me find my words. I feel like I'm tripping here. I feel like 99% of the population could very well use a nice 10-minute break in the middle of their day to just do some deep breath work, go outside, get some fresh air, feel the crisp air on their face, get some sunlight, just like reconnect and just breathe. And then you might find that the rest of your day just goes so much smoother. And it could be as simple as that. And yet we don't even allow ourselves that. We get so preoccupied with being busy, and then we wonder why. Why am I sick? Why am I not healing? Why isn't this getting better? Why can't I sleep? Why am I irritated? Why am I snapping at my children? Why am I this? But like we cannot take for granted sometimes those simple practices that can have a very profound and accumulative impact on our quality of life. And you might not feel it the first time, but you might feel it after a month of committing to this process. You might be like, yo, I'm a totally different person now.
Yeah. No, it's true. You got to commit to, I think, some form
Something.
of this relaxation. And did we say anything about sleep?
What do you mean? In what regards?
Well, if you have vagal dysfunction, you're not going to sleep properly.
Well, I mean, we talked about the sleep apnea, but we didn't really talk about like insomnia and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just whether it's sleep apnea or something else, sleep maintenance, insomnia, I think you're going to have problems, or there's opportunities for vagus nerve therapeutics to help with that.
Well,
And
100%. Like half the time people who come to see me and they're like, I don't sleep well. And it's either they can't fall asleep because their mind's going a mile a minute thinking about all the things. So hello, anxiety, or they're waking up several times in the middle of the night, which is typically a cortisol response or a poor blood sugar response, which then triggers your cortisol response. And cortisol is a stress hormone, which means that your body's in the exact opposite of where your vagus tone would be stimulated. So yeah.
break
it down that way.
Well, I think didn't, I mean, we can't, that's a good summary.
Mhm.
But I didn't learn that I didn't really, really understand the wisdom there, the influence of the vagus nerve until I did that pediatrics course for kids, osteopathic sort of visceral
Mm.
manipulation. When the teacher, she's amazing, this physio, Jean Ann Zoller, she gave a list of, here is a list of symptoms in unregulated children.
Hmm.
And they, they've got gut problems they usually bring up and spit up and things like that. That wasn't that weird to me, but it was, don't sleep through the night, or problems sleeping in the night where they cry, or they're not good at night. And I was like, that's interesting. That's very interesting, because if they're good, if they're really well regulated and they're calm and feel safe and everything's like, the sort of emotional environment at home is quite good, then they don't have as much of a problem sleeping through the night. In fact, they probably won't. Um,
Mhm.
and then that, just a little segue into uh, what we did to treat a lot of those kids, because we had kids come in to treat them. They come in usually with their mom, and if the kid was unregulated, you looked at the mom. And
Hmm.
it's not the blame mom, but there's a
No.
very special dyad between mother and child. I mean, the goddess that makes the kid, you meet, I mean, there should be some relationship there. You're like a mini goddess when you make a being. So anyway, a lot of the osteopaths or practitioners that are doing this, they knew intuitively, or was it because of the teacher? I don't know, but they treat the mom,
Mm.
and then you could treat the baby,
Mm.
because the baby won't let you in if the vagal tone isn't there. They don't feel safe and connected,
Mhm.
which is, and they need to look at your face. Singing helps, playing, like all the things you're talking about too, like playing, laughing. That's how you connected with the kid. But if the mother's vague, if she was so dysregulated in her own system, the baby or child just reflected that, and so you treat the mom first and then
Yeah, but
the
that makes
baby.
a lot of sense to me. Like the fact that skin to skin contact helps regulate the baby's nervous system and heart rate and everything like that. In those first few moments of coming out of like the womb, it's that connection again. Like there's such a profound connection between the baby and the mom. And because kids don't have the language, and because infants don't have words and they don't understand most words, they're probably feeding off of emotions, facial,
Yeah.
like you said, facial expressions, but
Yep.
also emotions is, Dr. Joe Dispenza always says this, emotions are energy in motion, and our thoughts and our emotions and everything has an energetic imprint. And if you're spending this much time with a baby, there's an exchange happening. So the erratic vibration in which you vibrate at is going to have a direct impact in which how your child, what your child receives. So for me, like that makes a lot of sense,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, and
Because and
even
that's
when
why
they're,
kids are so responsive to homeopathics. They respond so well to like energy medicine because they're so attuned to that. They don't have all the rest of the bullshit in this world that like starts to cloud their body's ability to receive that information. So that like makes so much sense in my mind.
yeah, and even when they're really young, they don't know that they are separate from anything else. They don't
No.
even have that understanding of as being a separate entity. So
Hmm.
it makes even more sense that the environment of those closest around them, has a massive impact on them. So
Yeah, that's super cool.
yeah, I think I'm pretty much happy with our vagus nerve chat.
Yeah, I said what I needed to say.
Yeah, and I would give us a good review for this episode. And if you feel like giving us a good review,
Totally unbiased.
completely biased, but yeah, because I had a good time sort of uh, learning again the anatomy and putting it into the places between our clinical understandings.
Hmm.
And so yeah, the nerd in me feels really good about this. And if you liked the episode,
Yeah.
you could give us a good review too.
Like, share, do we want to
Yeah, we
do
don't ask all the time.
and share? Yeah, we don't, but
Come on, what's it hurt? Come
Spread
on.
the love.
Press that
Spread the
button.
love. Spread
Yeah.
let everybody else know that they just stimulate their vagal nerve. Can you imagine everybody just like took a cold 30-second shower and took some deep breath work in the middle of the day? How much happier would our world be? Spread the information, you guys. Spread the love. I'm gonna go do some deep breath work and chant some Om Shanti Shanti stuff right now and stimulate my vagal tone.
Atta girl.
Great.
Atta girl. Okay. Well, thanks people for listening, and thanks for listening to our suggestion to like and share. Do it, and stay tuned, and we'll talk to you.
Do it.
Press that button. We'll talk to you again next week. Thank you,
Bye,
Michelle.
guys.